Welcome to the Jewish faith. Let's talk some more about God. Chapter 4, God and his lack of interest. Now, overuse injuries were not my first hints as to God's existence. I was introduced to him in the 1960s at Sinai Temple Sunday School. It was a strange introduction. One of my teachers was a woman who had moles all over her face, and every single mole had hair growing out of it. Now she, like many teachers and adults of any kind in that era, was prone to turning red and yelling at children. Modern technologies such as granola, meditation, and chakra contemplation were not available to her. This explains her propensity for yelling. Another one of my teachers was a heavy-set, hairy, middle-aged man who was the father of one of the kids in my class. He asked us, if God can do anything, can he make a rock so big he can't move it? I didn't hear a good answer to that question in that class. I still haven't heard a good answer to that question. Now, I wasn't only taken to Sunday school, I got to go to Sunday school, I got to go to temple services. Now there, old men would be on the stage intoning the prayers in Hebrew and in English, the same ones over and over and over again. Those old men and their prayers had absolutely nothing to do with me nor my life. For example, when I was 12 years old, I went on an overnight field trip with my Sunday school class. And it was there that I had my first crush, followed by my first shame, followed by my first jealousy, followed by my first despair. There was a boy there, my age. He had a kind face and a gentle smile and flowing black hair. Think Fabio, but scrawny and kind. Now, he was really nice to me, and I liked him. But he was into Nancy Edelstein, and during the retreat, they went off for a walk together, and when they came back, he was not wearing a shirt. Those warm feelings in my chest turned into twisting pains in my stomach. I had no idea what was happening inside of my body other than that it sucked. Those old men and their prayers were never going to help me with the Fabio Jr. problem. In the 1970s, my parents decided that temple was meaningless for them too, and they gave me the option to not be bar mitzvahed. Thank God. God at Sinai Temple was old and grouchy, and he would never have understood me anyway. And we were like two people who had been introduced at a cocktail party, but we realized we had nothing in common with each other. And there was this awkward moment of fidgety silence over the punch bowl, and then I think I'm going to go see what they're serving over there. And in the 1980s, God reappeared, and he looked a little better. I was taking Religion 101 class at Bowdoin College with Professor William Gohegan, the thundering orator who thought that I was the heir to him and to Hegel. Now, he was into something called mysticism. All the authors that we were reading were Eastern or Western mystics. In that class, I learned about something that could solve all of my problems, including Fabio Jr., for good. That something was the mystical experience, a direct experience of God. Professor Gohegan had had such an experience. Everyone who had written the books we were reading, they had had them experiences too. Even some of my classmates were having mystical experiences. I wanted a mystical experience too, but I wasn't having one. Oh. If God wasn't going to give me a mystical experience, who was going to do it? I know. Maybe the founder of analytic psychology, Carl Jung, could do it. Why did I pick him? Well, there's a reason. A lot of the professors at Bowdoin College were into Carl Jung, and they would see him in everything. They were the most charismatic professors on campus, and they would publish papers such as A Jungian Interpretation of Hamlet, or A Jungian Interpretation of Zen Buddhism, Unfortunately, no one had yet published the seminal paper, A Jungian Interpretation of Richard Snyder and his Fabio Jr. problem. But I just knew, if I could see my life in Jungian archetypal terms and mandalas and the collective unconscious, I would feel better. And if not Western enlightenment, how about Eastern? If I could have a Zen moment of Satori, I would for sure feel better. So my path was clear. I'd cover both bases, East and West. I would become a Jungian analyst with an interest in Far Eastern religions. So I went off to medical school thinking Jungian, Zen, and Taoist thoughts, and it was there that I met Elizabeth Targ of the Full Bladder Fascination Targs. Now, Elizabeth was not only going to solve my Fabio Jr. problem by being my first lover, she was also going to give me that mystical experience that had eluded me in college. Let me tell you about Elizabeth and her family. Now, Elizabeth was from Palo Alto. Her father was a renowned parapsychology researcher who had United States Defense Department funds to use ESP to find missile silos in Russia from their living room. Her mother was even more formidable. She had long white hair and was a combination of hippie Earth Mother and hardcore New Yorker. She was also the sister of Bobby Fischer, the famous chess player. Now, Elizabeth and her family not only knew about Carl Jung and mandalas, they pretty much were Carl Jung and mandalas. I was over at their house for a Thanksgiving dinner, and Elizabeth's father stood up to give a toast at the beginning of the meal. He raised his glass, and he explained to us that Thanksgiving was actually a Taoist holiday. These people made me feel better. They were surrounded by interesting people. You pretty much had to be interesting to be around them. So if I was with them, I was therefore interesting too. And if they could talk to dolphins and predict the future, and they could certainly help me with my problems. And they did help me a lot. It was Elizabeth who introduced me to Tina and to Rachel. These three women all knew each other, and in a way, they were like the three wise men to my baby Jesus. Oh. You know, they bestowed their gifts on me, but instead of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, they bestowed the gifts of their love, their themselves, and their caring. And their love, and Rachel's love in particular, was way better than anything I'd ever read in a mystical, esoteric textbook. My problems of repeated humiliations, betrayals of success by injury, and Fabio Jr. had been solved for good, not by religion, but by the warmth and love of a normal family life. But even though I had wandered away from God at that cocktail party, he hadn't forgotten about me. I could see him across the room. He would write something down on a piece of paper, and then he'd look back up at me. This didn't look good. And I could swear I saw him mouth the word